Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. Coming to you from the Baker Law Group, Studio 107, it's SOL. Live, raw, and uncensored with your host, Drew Baker. Shake
That
Bake.
just happened.
Matt Dixon, the Iron Man. A podcast dedicated to protecting your rights by exploring the law, politics, and current events. You have the right to remain silent and listen or call in and become a part of the show. And now, here's your host, Shake and Bake.
Most of us now say, get this, that the biggest threat to our way of life is not economic collapse or natural disasters or even a foreign invasion. It's us, our fellow Americans. 54% of us cite our fellow Americans.
There's a fracture that I don't think we've seen in over a century. It's like people fighting against people.
Are we permanently broken as a society?
Welcome to the SOL podcast. I am your host, The Shake and Bake, and the time has finally arrived. This is the episode that was my fault because of the accident we had to postpone, but it is back, and we have Steven Carr, author Steven Carr, in the studio. Super excited about that today. I'm going to do a quick roll call. Iron Man, are you present?
I'm here, and I'm just so happy that you made it here safe and healthy today, Drew.
Thank you,
It was
sir.
quite a scare last time.
Thank you, sir. And the Special K. Is the Special K here?
Present and accounted for.
Very nice. Very nice. And our honored guest, Steven Carr. How are you today, Steven?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
We're very excited to have you on. Thank you for coming on today. And we're really excited to talk about the topic that is in your book and go through some of these ideas with how do we get our beliefs? Where do they come from? How do we solidify them? And I guess in some ways, how do some of those beliefs hold us back? That's a pretty good summary, right?
Yeah.
Okay, not bad. I read the book.
As you're setting me up, though, I'm thinking, why are you called Shake and Bake?
The Shake and Bake came from my mentor, who I don't know if you're familiar with the movie
Talladega Nights.
Talladega Nights, where they say
Will
shake
Ferrell.
and bake.
Yeah, okay.
And my mentor, Mr. Thomas, who is of counsel to the office here, started calling me Shake and Bake a long time ago. So it just kind of stuck, but I like it. You got to shake it before you bake it.
Gotcha.
So good times. But you can find the show. Obviously, we're streaming live on YouTube right now. You can also find us after we stream today, the edited copy on iHeart, Verbal, Spotify, Buzzsprout, iTunes, Apple Podcast, and all other podcast forums out there. We're probably on them. I think we've got to go through the dreaded disclaimer. I don't want to waste a lot of time today. There's so much to talk about. I'm just going to get that out of the way. As everyone knows, this is a legal podcast. We're not going to hit a lot of legal topics today by any means, but either way, we'll just get this done. And when it's over, we're going to get into the good stuff. The views and opinions expressed on our show today are not to be construed as legal advice. There is no way, in any way, that we are creating an attorney-client relationship. All right, we got it over with, and now on to the show. Mr. Carr, we understand and have had the wonderful opportunity to read Power Beliefs, the title of your book, and that's why we brought you here today, because there is a lot of divisiveness in America. And the question I guess everybody has is, does that all flow back to our beliefs and how we form them? And obviously there's going to be some conflict, and how do we really address these conflicts in a way to understand or better understand where other people may be coming from? And I want to start by just asking you some questions, a basic introduction of yourself, and we're going to talk about, I guess, our own individual takeaways of the book. But let's start by that. Tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about the book, the motivations for writing the book.
Well, I am, my background is communication psychology. I wanted to be a writer when I was younger. I went out to Hollywood and I actually wrote 2 screenplays, became movies, of which I only saw one of them because they were such schlocky poor movies. Yeah. But I was always interested in why people do things, and I was particularly interested in the way we do it with words, how we motivate, how we inspire. That got into dialogue. I'd always have dialogue in my head, like most people. Like you'd have an argument and you'd be thinking, oh, what could I have said differently, or how could I have won that way, or what have you. And upon graduating and going out to Hollywood and then coming back, I pretty much have had a career in marketing and sales.
Okay.
Continued on that kind of exploration of like, how do you motivate? How do you, and then had some significant things happen, which we can talk about in a little bit, but got into hypnotherapy, became a hypnotherapist, and then it basically all kind of solidified for me that everything comes down to your beliefs. And the most interesting aspect of that is, although we've probably heard that, oh, it's your belief system, whether you believe it or you don't believe it, it's going to happen that way. We've never had really at least I never had, and I've studied this and had college and hypnotherapy. Nobody's ever really clearly defined beliefs, clearly defined all of the parts of your belief system so that you could actually work with them and do something with the belief system. It was always like, oh, you need to change your beliefs. Well, how do you do that? Well, first of all, you have to know what a belief is. You have to know what its component parts are. How do you change that? Right. And so that's really what I became fascinated with, and that is basically the topic of the book.
Well, I'm a bit fascinated by the hypnotherapist. I was wondering if possibly you could hypnotize Matt and then make him less distracted, because he is the master, what, Kelsey?
Of distraction. Of distraction.
We call him that because, as you could tell in the intro, he was already watching himself again on YouTube today. That's 2 times now. But in all seriousness, I think the hypnotherapy is very interesting. Off air, Steve and I had talked previously about my experience of being hypnotized and not believing that was even possible. I was at one of those comedy shows and became the primary entertainment when I was jumping around the stage acting like a chicken, and that I was really hot because I was being told the lights were very warm, and they were. But it was amazing to me that is possible. I just was a skeptic. I didn't think that everybody could be hypnotized, but that I found to be very interesting about you as part of your practice as a hypnotist.
Yeah, I don't do that. I'm not a stage hypnotist.
Oh, I know that. Not the comedy kind.
Oh, I know. You know. I'm just putting that out there so nobody else thinks that, because that is a great fear. There's also this great, as I said, with like belief systems. There's also a great, and I'll just call it an ignorance in the sense of a lack of awareness of really what hypnotherapy is. People are hypnotized every single day. Everybody is. You have to almost go through there's not really a clinical state of hypnosis, but there's this. Your brain waves go into a theta, which you always have to go through before you hit delta, which is sleep. So everybody goes through a state of hypnosis. Children, when you're born up till about the age of 7, you're always in a state of theta, which is almost this receptive, suggestive state of being. And so you're in hypnosis so many times a day. Everybody is. When they're watching a movie and they get carried away in it and they start crying, they're in a state of hypnosis.
Really?
Yeah, because they've pretty much they've focused their attention so much that they actually believe that this is happening, and that's why they're allowing the emotions and the cathartic sense of, oh, this is sad or scary or whatever it may be to affect them, and they're not being consciously rational, saying, oh, I'm watching a show. They've allowed that suggestibility that this is really happening to enter into their mind, and that's the state of hypnosis as well.
That's fascinating. I think of when I'm driving sometimes and I start to get really tired and my mind's saying, pull over, you need to go to bed, or you need to take like a 5-minute break on the side of the road. Yet I like feel paralyzed, like I can't do it because I'm still driving. And you could do the old nod off, but you're right there on the state of, or on the edge, I guess, of consciousness versus unconsciousness. And that's how I recall my experience with being hypnotized. I was right in that same, zone of, I knew what was going on a little bit. I kind of understood it, but I felt somewhat paralyzed in being able to maybe control it is how I recall it. But anyway, I think that's all fascinating. How did that play into the book? Was that something that you used heavily in writing the book?
Actually, no. Actually, I use hypnosis as a tool.
Okay.
A lot of people think that hypnosis itself is the change instrument, and to me, it's just to really get you into a state where suggestions and things within your mind can either crystallize, or we can kind of manipulate them a little bit to morph them more to your advantage, to make them more effective. It's a tool, but you don't necessarily need it in order to change your belief system. It just helps you become more suggestible.
Is the smoker example a good a good example? Like if I am a smoker and I'm trying to quit smoking, is that a good example of how hypnosis can be used to kind of?
It's one example, yes. Again, you can quit smoking without hypnosis.
Right.
Obviously, many people have done it. You can do many things without hypnosis. Hypnosis is it's just a very relaxing, and when you feel great when you're in hypnosis. And it's so much can happen within your mind at that time that typically when I take somebody through hypnosis, and I'll come, they'll think, oh, I wasn't in hypnosis. Again, because people think, oh, if I'm in hypnosis, I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. I'm completely out of it.
Which is what I thought was going to be like, yeah.
But you are aware. And so a lot of times you'll think, oh, I wasn't in hypnosis. But then I can say something like, well, how long do you think that we actually were doing that? And they'll say, oh, God, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. And I'll be like, no, that was 35 minutes.
Wow.
And this distortion of time has happened for them because so much is happening within their mind.
Very
and
interesting.
so it's just a very good grounds to what we do with hypnosis is we bypass the critical filter. The critical filter is what we're doing all day long. It's like, okay, does that make sense? Do I believe that? Is that true? Is that, well, I have instances where that didn't happen like that. And so we have this constant critical filter. All this information coming in is being put to the test of what we believe and what we think is true. And so we'll repel stuff. When I get you into hypnosis, we can lower that. And so you're not listening to everything I'm saying and saying, hey, is that true? Do I believe that? Did I know somebody who did that? You're not doing that. And so it allows you to embed more information into your mind that would typically be kept out because you just want to reject it at the face value with your critical filter.
I don't know. It sounds like therapeutic Adderall to some extent. It'll keep you from being ADD like me. But anyway, I digress. I just find that whole hypnosis thing very fascinating. But for the book, anyway, tell us some reasons why you decided to write the book. Was it more of a personal reason or just more professional over your years of talking to different people and understanding, how they have these hardcore beliefs and where they came from?
You want to just talk about the book, or you want me to talk about how I even got to that
How
point?
did you get there? Yeah, I mean, why was the book?
Well, as I said, communication psychology, a lot of marketing and so forth. But does anybody remember what they were doing 10 years ago right now?
Oh, for sure. Probably being distracted, kind of like I generally am. That's about it.
One thing that
I have no idea.
You probably didn't realize when you asked me, like when I wanted to reschedule.
Yeah.
10 years ago, and about right now, I was walking around contemplating my suicide.
Oh,
it was May 21st, 2011.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's in the book. And so
wow.
What had happened was I had really hit a low point in my life. A lot of different things kind of disappeared and were converging upon me. And anyway, I just had this one day. It was a Saturday. It was the worst day of my life. I talk about it a little bit in the book. And at one point, I'd sat in my apartment for hours upon hours upon hours, and I was just so focused and so lost in this train of thought. And then I left the apartment, and it was probably around 3:00, and I just started walking, and I realized I have to die. I need to die. And I was ready to do it, and I thought, well, you know what? Maybe you're just being a little emotional, Steve. Maybe you're like feeling sorry for yourself. Like, if you died today, think about the things that wouldn't happen. So I started thinking about the most important things that I was looking forward to in life, and that had to deal with my children. And my son and my daughters, and I was thinking about my son playing high school sports, and I'd never get to see that. My daughters would go down the aisle, or graduations and grandkids, and all this stuff I would miss out if I were actually to kill myself. And oddly enough, I passed the test. I was like, oh yeah, I don't care. So all of these things that I thought were the most important things, the things that were the only reasons for me to stay alive, upon reflection, no longer meant anything to me. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do it. There was one little hiccup, a glitch, however, because I had known two women whose fathers had committed suicide, and I saw the aftermath. And I knew the questions. I didn't know all of them, obviously. I knew just a tiny little bit of what they were suffering through. But it was enough to impress upon me that, man, you would never want to do that to your children. And so I had this one belief in my head that kept me from doing it. And so at that point, I was like, oh, I can't do that. But you know what? Maybe if I did it in a way that nobody knew that I was committing suicide, if I could find a way to die without it looking like suicide, I could kind of have my cake and eat it too. Of course, my kids would be upset that I died, but at least all those unanswered questions wouldn't appear in their life, and I could get away with it, and I could end this misery that I was in. So I spent my time, as I was walking, trying to figure it out. And I'm a pretty creative guy, relatively smart, and I thought, I'll be able to figure it out. And so I just I went from the state of being just totally emotional and depressed to the state of being totally analytical, trying to figure out what do I got to do to make this thing work.
Like focused on just that.
That's all I was focused on. How can I do it? Okay, and I'd come up with something. I'd be like, okay, no, then this would happen, and I'd figure that out. So I'd boom, boom, boom. I kept going through it, kept needling it through it. You know, it's kind of like writing a crime drama. Like, okay, how do you do this to get away with the perfect crime? And this was like hours. So this, again, kind of like hypnosis. I don't know how much time passed because I was so focused. I know that nightfall hadn't hit yet, but it was like twilight when what had happened was I sat at this picnic table and I just kept going at it. And finally, I had it. I had the way to do it. And at that moment, as soon as I got this, what I called the loophole, a way to get around it, my mind was released from that need to try to figure it out. And all of a sudden, all this kind of awareness came rushing to me as far as what the hell I had been doing this whole day. Like I realized what I had, like I could think of anything at that moment. And what I thought of was like what I was doing. So it had been hours before that I was really kind of just in this emotional, depressed state. And then it had been hours with this real intense analytical mind. And in that moment, this vacuum, whoosh, this idea of what are you doing? It dawned on me what I was doing. And I saw my mind so clearly at that moment. Not only did I see my mind, but as I say in the book, I saw other disturbed minds. I was able, and this was around 2011, I think there was some cases happening that there was a woman, I think, who drove her children into a river.
I remember that, yep.
I understood it. I understood how she could have done that. At that moment, it made sense to me. Not that it made sense to me in any sense that it was right or that it was reasonable or rational, but I understood how your mind could be kind of entrapped in its own, cast a spell on itself in this loop that just keeps going and going and going. And so these tragic ends are the only solution you see. And this awareness kind of came washed on me, and I was just like, I saw the mind so much clearer than I'd ever seen it before studying. And I got myself out of that, and then I got into hypnotherapy and learned that. And I'm assuming similar to law school, you learn all this. You learn all this in law school, and then as they graduate, and they're like, "Okay, go do it." And like, you probably don't really know, well, how do you do it? Like, I understood, but so that was the same with me with hypnotherapy. How do you do it? I was given so much information, but how do you start putting it together? And I finally realized, well, yeah, okay, I'm dealing with beliefs. This person believes this. And so I started working on just that aspect of it. And that's what led me to kind of understand it in the way my mind could understand how everything's going on with all these beliefs. And by doing that, I thought, well, nobody's ever taught me this and nobody's ever talked about this. So maybe if I write a book, not only will it help crystallize it more for me, but I'll also be able to talk about it with other people. And so that's the motivation, and that's why I'm here. It was 10 years ago today and that's why. Cheers.
Cheers is right. We're happy that we're doing this right now with you versus the alternative. And I have to say that's a compelling story, and thank you for being so personal. That's obviously a highly personal story, and you do share it in the book. And it was, I think, right to start the book that way, because it certainly got my attention. I don't know about you guys, but that was, I think sometimes we need that personal element to relate to. We've all had those dark times in our lives, those times that are the ones we're not proud of that we think about. And to personalize the book that way, I think was a great way to get it going and better understand how your beliefs could be a big part of.
Can I just touch on two more things before we get off that? I don't want to be morose and depressing here, but it's interesting since I've shared that with people, how many people have told me that they've been basically in the same situation like that. I don't think we really understand how many people have gone through a day like that in their life where they thought about ending it. I think it's very, very...
I think it's more common, especially in this country. We tend to shy away from the mental health side of things, which is something here at the firm we've always been it's a big thing for us when we talk about a client's case and they're going through these terrible times of being injured. They need the mental recovery as much as they do the physical, but there's a stigma, some crazy stigma that's kind of developed over the years that if you have thoughts like that, there must be something wrong with you, or that you're a outcast of some kind. In reality, I think everybody has those times where it's just so damn rough that you want something better, and sometimes you start thinking, well, what are my options? And unfortunately, it's not discussed enough. It probably would help everybody to have a little more honest discussion about that.
Yeah. My brother asked me afterwards, he says, why didn't you call me? I'm the youngest of 6. And my close brother said, why didn't you call me? And I think another thing that people don't realize is that when you have decided, there's no going back. I asked him, why would I call you? I wasn't looking for somebody to talk me out of it. So if anybody has ever suffered that, had somebody suffer that and wondered why they didn't reach out to them, this happened to me in a matter of hours. This was literally like 6-7 hours of my life. I was down to the point where I couldn't reach out for help. I was already past that, event horizon line. So if that has happened to anybody, I want you to know that this can happen very quickly, and it's just something that, you need to find people upstream of them hurting if you're thinking that could happen, and it can happen. So anyway,
No, you're right. I think that's one of the big issues too, is that we don't pay enough attention to other people, especially those that are close to us. We don't pay enough attention to their mental health. And how are they? I mean, really, how are they? Not how are you? Oh, I'm great. Everything's good. What's really going on behind the scenes? And if we are a little more attentive to that, I think sometimes maybe we can provide some support before they get to that level where there's no going back. You're talking about where it wouldn't have mattered who talked to you or what they said, or it would have happened one way or the other. That was your mindset at the time. So, yeah, very interesting. Matt, you look like you're about to say something.
In no way am I trying to pat myself on the back. But one of those scenarios came up with a friend of mine that I knew that person was going through something. And so I reached out and continue to reach out to make sure that this person was okay. And I'm, again, not trying to pat but just trying to tell people, identify those scenarios where you have friends or family that you see going through things. Again, mental health issues are not out in the open. We don't talk about them freely.
Right.
But we're all smart people. We know what situations are difficult, and we know what people are going through that are close to us. If something happens, reach out to somebody. Just be there. Be that voice, or be that ear. Be something. A sounding board, whatever it is. But you can continue to reach out to those people and help them through a situation. Steven, you said you were past that event horizon, but you had been working toward that for some time with some other issues going on in your life. And had there been maybe a couple of people that were really close to you who kept tabs on you and kept really close to you, maybe. Yeah. I don't know that they didn't, by the way.
Oh, no, they did. Well, first of all, I was like in that perfect storm. So I had moved here and had gone through a divorce, 6 months earlier. I was living by myself. I had no job. I had just lost my job. A company that hired me, and this was a great job. This was like my dream job. A company that hired me 2 weeks later, when I go in there, they have to let me go because they had been fired by the company that was outsourcing them.
Okay.
So my job was no longer there. I knew nobody in the state. I had no friends. I had no family. I was isolated in this tiny little apartment, and it just kept building.
Yep.
So.
Yep. But that's just, I was kind of itching to say, just generally a reminder out there to people. You have people that who are going through a difficult situation. Reach out, be there for them throughout. It's important to be there on the front end, not wait until there's some really bad thing going on the back end that you want to be there for them. Be there on the front end, and you'll help them through the entire situation.
Or like Steven said, you get to a point where it wouldn't matter anyway. So don't let people get that far.
Right.
Well, don't let your friends and family get isolated. Don't let them, when they start going downhill, when they start going downhill.
Yeah. If you're paying attention.
Yeah. So realize that going downhill can go down very fast. And so, just a point on that, because again, this is the first time I've ever talked about this with people I don't know, or outside of the book, or on a podcast. And it's interesting that it really is such an important thing for us to talk about, but it never really finds its way into a regular conversation.
Yeah, I can't see this being a conversation starter at a dinner party or something, right? But I commend you for being able to talk about it so freely, and I wish more people would, because if we were all a little more honest about that, I think we'd have just an overall better outcome in society, a whole lot less suicides and terrible things. So it's great. Let's talk about the power belief system. Can you explain to us what are power beliefs? I know there's a category system that actually, as you're talking about this, I'm going to put this up on our YouTube live feed. You'll see what Steven put in his book is called the pyramid. Obviously, some things are more important than others. And this, I think, was very helpful for me to understand, I guess, how we categorize and how we prioritize certain beliefs. So I'm going to throw that up. And Steven, why don't you go ahead and tell us about this system and how it works?
Okay, so if you look at everything that's going on inside of your mind, in your subconscious mind, there are obviously components. We can call them imagination, we can call them memories, we can call them beliefs, we can call them instincts. There's a lot of things going on inside of your mind that make you do what you do, make you believe what you believe. And if you look at this kind of like a game, and I were to ask you, if you were to play chess against somebody, and you'd never played chess, and you had no idea what the pieces were or how they moved, how well would you do in that game? You'd probably do rather poorly, particularly if you're going against somebody who's like a grandmaster. Like, how could you possibly win? Well, your subconscious mind is kind of a grandmaster. Everything that's in your subconscious mind has been built up and kind of reinforced and solidified, and it's all there working like a giant clock. And your beliefs are a huge part of this. And yet we have no idea what the pieces are of our belief system. So if we don't know what the pieces are, then we don't know, well, this piece moves this way, or this way. And so one of the largest problems with belief systems are that, well, maybe I can just ask you guys, like before you read the book, if I were to ask you, what's a belief? Like, tell me what your belief system is, or what is, just define for me a belief? How would you normally think of it?
I would have just said something you think. So it would have been very basic. I didn't have the framework for how you broke it all down. But I do like that because constantly what you were talking about with the internal monologue and thinking back on previous conversations, what I could have said differently. I do that all the time.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't have the definitions to put to the words that you were saying. So that really resonated with me when you were explaining this hierarchy of beliefs. I was like, that's the stuff that I've been thinking a lot in my head and just did not have the words to articulate the difference, like between an opinion, a superstition, a fact. And
so it
I thought
helped
that was
crystallize what these things were,
yes.
right?
So it was already going on in my brain. And I was like, I really like the way that you clearly and concisely defined all of those terms.
There's always a lot going on in her brain.
It's true.
Just
Oh my gosh.
Now we keep
You
it a
should
little bit
see
organized.
The journals.
That's
are,
awesome.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
haven't showed this to you guys
I
yet.
think
We're not there yet.
I think my interpretation of a belief, and this may be, again, based on my upbringing, was beliefs to me were more, I think, values. Like if I believed, and this comes from more of a religious upbringing, I think it was a belief that, doing the right thing is paramount to success, or being a good person is something that I should, I should believe that if I'm a good person, people are going to be good to me and there's going to be a great outcome. But those all were probably more centered around my foundation of being brought up in a very religious household. So beliefs sound more like, in my head, a belief in a greater being and a belief in
So beliefs had a little bit more gravity for you. Like the concept of a belief had gravity and weight
did.
to it.
It absolutely did. Yeah.
For a lot of people, it doesn't. It's more of a whimsy. What about you, Matt?
I think for me, when I looked at it, it was more like values, ethics, morals, again, from probably what would be considered more of a religious upbringing, right? So what are your beliefs? What's your belief system? And it's rooted in whatever kind of morals or values that you were brought up with. And so, over time, you come to this understanding that there are all kinds of different things out there, things that you can prove, things that you can't prove. And so, that there are some of your beliefs, how you have it structured here. Again, like Kelsey was saying, I've never really thought about it in that way. This book helped, formalize that process about different kinds of beliefs and where they fall and how they're categorized. Before, I just kind of assigned a value to them of my own. But yeah, that would be how I would summarize beliefs as I would have known it before the book.
So have you guys ever heard somebody say, I don't believe it, I know it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or, I don't deal with beliefs, I deal with facts.
Yeah. All the time.
Right? So a lot of times beliefs are deprecated to the sense of like, oh, they're not really worth much. They're just, they're an opinion. There's something that you thought of. And so that is one of the big problems with beliefs is that the term belief itself is often deprecated to mean just something in somebody's head. And so what I at least did, and I'm not saying I'm right. Okay. So from here on out, I'm not saying I'm right. I'm saying I've just defined them in a way that actually allows me to understand them and to then use them as like chess pieces. So a belief. Oh, one more question for all of you. How did you guys do on the belief the quiz in the book? There's 40 questions of which I asked how many of these are beliefs, and you were to mark each one you thought was a belief.
I don't remember my exact score because I read this when we first got it, but I did pretty well on it. I'm not going to lie.
I'm going to say poor to quite poor.
But I will also say I'm a skeptic or a cynic by nature too, so I understood what you were talking about with that. So I kind of knew to go through the list, and pretty much anything somebody thinks is technically a belief. It just might not be a correct belief, but they still believe it.
Yes.
So
I was 28 out of 40.
20 out of 40. Yeah. Typically, it's about 15 to 22 out of the 40 things. But actually, it turns out that 38 of the 40 are beliefs, and when that happens, people are just like, "What?" So we have to start at first principles is what is a belief, and so this is how I am defining what a belief is. A belief is a conclusion. Yes. Anything that you can think of that you can say, well, that's a conclusion, is a belief. Could be wrong, but yes, it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. Yeah. It's a conclusion. So if you're like, oh, that person reminds me of my best friend in 8th grade, well, that's a conclusion, right? Because they remind you of somebody. If you say, oh, it's looks like it's going to rain outside, well, that's a belief because that's a conclusion. And in the book, I say, koala bears are the cutest animals on the planet. Well, that's a conclusion too. How about the sun will rise in the east tomorrow? Well, that's a conclusion. And that's when people say, whoa, that's not a belief. That's a fact. It's a fact that the sun's going to rise in the east. And so that's, again, where the words start getting in the way. So the pyramid, I use belief, the term belief, as a general blanket term for anything that is a conclusion. And so within these conclusions, we now have categories. And that's what Matt's talking about. And these are a hierarchy of categories, hierarchy of categories. And then again, I've put my labels on them, which I'm not saying I'm right, but they help me understand them. And so the very first, the uppermost one I call alpha beliefs. And alpha beliefs deal with the biggest questions, like where do we come from? Why are we here? What is life about? Is there a God? Is there not a God? How did life develop? Is there a purpose for life? Now, these, I guess I should say, there are three things that really kind of determine whether a belief, what category belief goes into. And the one that pretty much will explain everything, and you really only need to understand, is a level of certainty. The degree of certainty you have that belief is true or will hold true is how we categorize beliefs. And the uppermost one, which is alpha beliefs, we have tons of certainty. And although we can't necessarily prove them, if you ask an atheist, they are dead certain there is no creator. And if you ask a very spiritual person, they are dead certain that there is a creator. And so these beliefs are ones that we can't prove, but they really do shape our lives. The category underneath that I call truths. Now, again, I am using a word, truth, to define all of these categories, which is not the best use of language, but it's really the easiest way for us to understand what I'm talking about. And so for a truth is always true. Now, how do I mean that? I mean that in that no matter where you go in history, it will always be true. And I use the examples of a triangle. Triangle has three sides. The triangle having three sides will always be true no matter where you are in the universe, no matter where you are in history. If it changes a side, it's no longer a triangle. And a base 10, 2 plus 2 is 4, is always true. It can never change. And things that happened in the past can never change either because we're in a universe that actually the time arrow goes one direction. So if something happened, that is true too and can never change. So Abraham Lincoln was our 16th president is a truth. Why? Because it can never change. Beneath truths, we then have facts, and facts are nearly always true. We like to think of facts as being like, a fact is the utmost truth. It isn't. Facts are nearly always true, and I give the example in the book of water freezing at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, which is nearly always true. However, the more pressure you have on water, it's not going to freeze at 32 degrees. And so facts are nearly always true, but there's little wiggle room with facts.
Did you give an example, I think, about like if I said Biden is the president, that's a fact.
That's a fact.
Today, but it could change and will change, at some point down the road if there's a new president. So it's, that one, for whatever reason, resonated with me, is that it's something that has the ability to change at some point. It may be true right now. Yeah,
for instance, it is, 15
minutes past 3. Yeah.
That is a fact. Will that be a fact in 1 minute? No, it won't.
Yeah.
Is it, somebody might say, well, you're splitting hairs. It's a truth right now. It's truth that Biden is president. Yes, it is, but will it always be that way?
Right.
Now, what is my purpose of splitting these hairs? My purpose behind all of this is to try to help people better their lives. And if somebody believes that there's something about them which may be a fact, but they believe it's a truth and can never change, well, I need to get in there and give a little leverage on like, listen, that's a fact. That's not a truth. This can change. Now, there might be a long shot, but I at least give them a little hope that this can change. So again, I wield these in ways to help people, not to try to establish some type of standards out there in the world.
Right.
After facts, we have values. And values are a downstream kind of little brother of your alphas, because the alphas tell you, like, why are we here? What's the purpose of life? And so then values kind of explain the way that there are conclusions that explain the best way to live this life, to experience this life. And these, their work ethics, their happiness and pleasure, how you treat other people, how you treat the planet and animals and so forth. These all fall in your values. And values are so important. Values, for the most part, when people are having problems, it's because they are not living their own values. Beneath values, we have opinions, and opinions are sometimes true. Sometimes I like Corona. Sometimes I like something else. And this is where everything kind of changes right here at opinions as well, because opinions go from this sense of like nobody really wants to give them credibility. It's we call them opinions. It's just like, that's just what that person thinks. Okay, but that person has a level of certainty that that opinion is going to hold true for them. And then beneath that, we have superstitions. Superstitions are rarely true, but we have them.
Not according to my wife. She believes a lot of that craziness.
Yeah. Well, in the book, I talk about like Vegas. I use sports. There's a lot of superstition in sports.
Oh, yeah.
So much superstition when you go to Vegas and, you do things certain ways. You wear certain clothes. You
blowing the dice.
Yeah.
You have all these little things that you think like you kind of hacked the universe. You figured out this little thing that the universe doesn't know, this little shortcut that if I do these things will happen. Now, they're not always positive. We also have negative superstitions, right? The old ones, the black cats and that, that for some reason, if this happens, this conclusion, it's an if-then, and it's some strange connection, but people believe those.
I throw away pennies that are not heads up sometimes.
Do you still do that?
Admit that.
Do you?
I do. It's ridiculous, but if I pull it out and it's not heads up, I'll be like, yeah, okay.
Things you're
not going to chance it.
You think you know somebody.
I just, I don't know. It's a crazy superstition, but
what's the basis of the heads up, tails up?
Boy,
that
I
makes
don't
you
know.
say it's not worth it anymore.
It's so interesting because it would never happen on anything but a penny. So somewhere along the way, there was a programming error in my brain that said, well, if it's heads down, that's negative, that's bad, get rid of it because it's probably going to somehow morph itself into a bad luck situation, which is
that's a common
absurd.
superstition. I've heard that too.
Have
If you
you?
find a penny
Okay.
and it's heads up on the ground, you pick it up and that's good luck. If you find a penny that's heads down, you just leave it alone.
All
It's
right,
bad luck.
listen.
I've taken
I
it to
don't
the
know where
next
it
level.
came from, but
When I pull it out of my
Sure.
pocket, I've taken it to the next level. Like, oh, that one's not good.
if I find them face down, I flip them face up so the next person finds it and they can
Oh,
get
that's
good
a
luck.
nice thing to do.
Drew,
Interesting
if you-
value.
If you find a $100 bill upside down, just give it to me.
All
Throw
right.
it out.
I told you this only applies to pennies for some reason.
Darn it.
Yeah.
But on that same note,
I was going to turn all of his money upside down.
it's smart move, except I don't have any money and I don't carry cash, so you could be in trouble. But I think along that same line, one thing that stuck out in the book, and I think it was just evidenced here by our conversation, I didn't get offended that you guys laughed at me about my silly superstition. It's kind of silly. I know it is. It's not such a strong belief that I immediately became defensive. Like, all right, that's not cool, guys. Seriously, I didn't even touch me. It wasn't a big deal to me. But if you would have said something else that was higher up on the pyramid, all of a sudden now we got a problem. Now I'm going to argue with you. Now I'm going to tell you you're wrong.
Yeah.
And this is kind of where I really started to understand how this fits into the structure of our belief system and why some of those rouse us up so much when somebody says something, whereas others, we can just kind of let it go. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Like an opinion.
You don't have as much certainty in these lower ones as you do in the upper ones, so you don't have as much invested in them.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not something that riles up a lot of emotion in me that you think different.
Yeah. And the final category, just to finish this out, is the final category is hopes, and those are seldom, if ever, true.
Yeah.
So, for instance, I hope to win the Powerball. Okay. Oh, I'm not going to get offended if you say, Steven, you're not going to win the Powerball, because it's seldom, if ever, true. You hold this little tiny degree of belief that yes, I'm going to win it someday, and for the most part, hopes are things that we really, unfortunately, don't feel are going to happen to us, but we want to happen to us.
Right.
And there's no reason that hopes can't happen to us. Now, I gave a really astronomical example there with the Powerball, but a lot of times people will categorize as a hope something that they could easily achieve, but they just don't have a lot of certainty in it. So that's part of what I do as a belief strategist, is to try to figure out, okay, well, what's going on with that hope? And can I marry that hope or somehow leverage beliefs from higher categories that have a lot more certainty to help them achieve that hope or dream that they have at that level? So those are the categories of the belief system, and then their relative power is determined on how much certainty you have in those, and they'll go into the categories and so forth. So we can start from there.
Kelsey has a hope that because she identifies as a vaccinated person, that she's going to win the Vax-a-lottery.
Fingers crossed. So, woo.
I don't think that hope.
I like how she stacked it, though. She put the fingers crossed, and the fingers crossed actually helped double that power.
Double it up, right?
That's right.
Double it up. Well, that's a really good explanation, and like I said, that helped me. That was the point in the book where it was kind of like, it's the aha moment that I got it at that point. I understood, where we, not necessarily the foundation of where they came from, but I could start to categorize correctly my beliefs as far as what's more important than others. But how do we, I guess, use these beliefs in ways that are damaging to us, this hierarchy of beliefs? So if we get up to, and we think something is a alpha belief, but in reality, it's a fact, or in reality, it's a value. I mean, where is that spot or how could we use that in a way that would have a negative effect in our ability to maybe achieve something greater?
One example I think I gave in the book was when I was explaining how beliefs are actually put into our subconscious mind, and one of them has to deal with emotion. That's just one of, I believe there's 7 different ways that beliefs are created. And so, for instance, let's say that I had an amazing voice and I could sing. However, I had a very traumatic experience in like 7th grade, and I flubbed my solo, and people maybe laughed. Okay, so now I absorb that as the sense of that I am not a good singer, I'm terrible, and I pretty much crystallized that as like a fact. And it was reinforced by all these people laughing at me that this is true. So the idea is that I'll never be a singer has now reached a certainty level of like fact in my mind, or it might be value. Pretty much values and above are where we want our beliefs, our positive beliefs to be. That's where all the power is, from values and above. So I believe your question was, how do we kind of screw ourselves over by miscategorizing a belief?
Right.
Correct?
Yeah.
So that's a miscategorized belief. That happened one time, but you basically said it's nearly always true. So that is a miscategorized belief that we would then be able to rationally pull out and examine and let you look at and how many times and all these other things for you to realize, okay, it isn't as powerful as I thought it was, and it has probably held your life back if that was something you truly wanted to do. It's a very basic example, but I think it kind of holds up as far as how it can easily be miscategorized from the get-go.
I like the example that you gave regarding the person who thought that, I think they lost someone that they loved early in life, and started to form this belief system that life, could end so quickly and could end tomorrow, and there's no reason to plan for a future or put any effort into building a long-term plan, because what's the point? It could be gone tomorrow, and how paralyzing that can be for certain people. That resonated not with me personally, but someone I know very well who'd gone through a near-death experience type situation, and it was really difficult for them to see beyond today.
Let me ask you guys this. These are some beliefs that I'm finding out with that example. When we talk about them, a lot of people say, yeah, I had that belief. Has anybody in this room thought that they were going to die young?
Yes.
Yes, for me.
Never thought about it.
No? Okay, so when you think young was maybe you make it through your 30s or to your 30s or something?
Yeah, I think early on I was, did a lot of things that were probably a little more risky than, and I appreciated the risk in the sense that I knew what I was getting myself into. But nonetheless, I just always had this fear I think maybe the fear is a better way for me to describe it. It wasn't that I fully believed it, but I was afraid of it.
Yes.
I didn't want to die young, but I was afraid it was going to happen.
There's a lot of people who believe for some reason or another that they are going to die young. And it's really prevalent when people lose parents, because they always are marking their age versus their parents' age when their parents passed. Am I going to make it past that? Now, if you have two generations, so for instance, my grandfather died of cancer, then my mother died of cancer. At this age, that really weighs heavily on the mind. And so people somehow have this, it's kind of an alpha value fact belief that, okay, this is how the world works, and this is how it works, particularly with our family, and I have this limit, I have this ceiling. And so now that could be a positive thing. It could cause them to attempt all their dreams and to do everything they can as soon as they can to be able to accomplish what they want in life, or it can create a paralyzing situation of I'll never be able to have what I want because I have this cap on my life. And that is a conclusion, a belief that is pernicious, and a lot of people have that as well. And so you have to investigate, well, where does that belief come from? What is the truth of that? There's people who, I think in the book, I gave an example of the woman whose mother had died, but there was no hereditary type situation, but it was just this fear that this was going to happen. And so this changed her values. Again, values are, what should I do in order to lead the best life as possible? And if this person has a truncated life where I'm only going to live for another decade or so, what's the point of going to school? What's the point of doing all this other stuff if I'm limited? So her values now become, I'm going to enjoy life. I'm going to become very social. I'm going to have pleasure, and I'm going to travel. I'm going to do all this other things because I have a ticking clock. And when that ticking clock doesn't happen, well, then they find themselves behind in life, and they might be thinking, I'm not going to die young, but now, you know what, I wasted all that time, and now it's too late to start over. So now they've just compounded it by having another conclusion that it's too late. I've wasted that. And so all of these beliefs can truly affect someone's life. And there's hundreds of thousands of beliefs going on inside of our mind. And the book, The Power Beliefs, is there may be just one belief that's the giant domino that if you can topple that, or if you can enhance it, it can help change so many other beliefs. The one belief for me was if you kill yourself, your children are going to suffer the rest of your life. That was one belief. That was a conclusion. That one conclusion put up a wall for me to give me enough time to try to work around it, which then gave me the space and the distance from that emotional being to be able to see what was going on. One belief can do so much, and that's why the title of the book is The Secret, You May Be One Belief Away.
Right.
So I guess I guess.
Yeah, that was a great answer. I think another one that comes up that I remember, and I think maybe at 40 I started to understand a little more, was maybe I'm just too old to get into something new. I don't think I could be successful because I've for 40 years behind me. How much longer do I really have? How long is it going to take? That was somewhat crippling. I guess some people have midlife crisis. I think that was one of the things I dealt with was, I like to start new things. It's something I've always enjoyed, but I started to feel that kind of restraint on doing that because of that belief that it's not possible to do it once you get this age.
Yeah.
And it got in the way.
I
of some things,
consulted
for
with
sure.
I was consulting with a guy this week, and he's I believe he's 40. He's 40 or 41, and he feels stuck in life. He's very stuck. He's very unhappy, and he's heading towards a dark place. And I was telling him, "Oh, if I could go back to being 40, like I might go get another degree. I would probably go back to school. I'd do this, that." And I'm 53, so it's only 13 years, but to me that's a big deal. And he was like, he stopped me. He says, "Are you serious?" I was like, "About what?" He's like you'd go back to school? You'd do that? I was like, "Yeah, why not?" And he had this belief that 40, you're past that. That was supposed to happen when you're 20. You can't go back to school. You look pathetic if you go back to school at 40. Right. And was some conclusion in his mind that, I'm not saying his mind, my mind probably would have been the same at 40. That no, you don't start then. It's too late now. But that's a conclusion. And what category is that conclusion actually placed in within somebody's mind? If somebody's listening to this right now, like if you think whatever your age is too late, why? Where did that conclusion come from? And what is the merits of that conclusion? Is it a fact? Is it a truth? Or is that just an opinion? Where did it come from? And why is it there? And is it effective? Is it effective for the happiness of your life? Is it effective for your values, for you to achieve all you want to achieve? Does that belief help you or hurt you?
Yeah. That's where the hierarchy of beliefs is helpful. I think without having that roadmap, it's so difficult to identify where that falls and are you fooling yourself?
Yeah.
And that's what I liked about that.
Kelsey wants to say something.
She does. She's got something.
I was just
on her
thinking
mind.
that ties in a lot with the other part of the book that I thought was interesting, where it's 6 or 7 different ways that we get our beliefs
Origins
from.
of belief, yeah.
Yes. And I like that too, because that helped me really sit down and think about like, okay, why did I start thinking this? Why did I start believing this? Was it because somebody else told me that and I just took their word for it and now I think it too? Is it because a bunch of my life experiences have shaped this and this happens over and over again? Every time I do A, B is the consequence. And I think that goes a lot to how you move it up on the hierarchy. The stronger method that you use to develop the belief, the higher you're going to put it up at the top of the pyramid. So
yeah, and beliefs they're again stacked, right? So something might have been given to you as an authority download, which is that somebody above you who's an authority figure told you something, and so since you had no experience or knowledge of this, you accept it. But then maybe somebody else does it, so now it's repetition, and then maybe you have an experience that kind of you can extrapolate, like, well, that's kind of similar to what they told me, so yeah, that works. So your beliefs can kind of be built up by all of these other origin factors. These I call them kind of like motivators too, that motivate you to believe this conclusion. And sometimes you have a crazy conclusion in your head, and you have no idea how it got there. Like why? Where did this come from?
Yeah.
Because you can. It wasn't just one time. It wasn't just one experience that gave it to you. But it's just like, where does that come from, and why do I have that?
But then from the flip side, sometimes you have that strong belief based on one experience because you based it off of the emotion.
Yeah.
So I have a similar example. I had to sing a song for one of my language arts classes and when I was in like 6th grade or something. And I'm a terrible singer and everybody laughed. And it only took the one time for me to be like, hey, I don't want to go through that embarrassing experience where I have to sing in front of my entire class again. So
is that why you never tried out for American Idol?
In part, yeah.
I thought so.
I like to take my talents to the karaoke bar.
Oh.
Where everybody's a little lubricated.
So do you sing at karaoke now?
Sometime.
Oh, okay. So it didn't paralyze you to the point where you didn't want to get up.
For a very long time it did, though. I would say from, when like 6th grade, it was until I got older and had a little more confidence and decided I didn't really care what people think about stuff anymore.
Yeah.
I just want to have fun.
Yeah.
So I got that new belief that I'd rather have fun than care what a bunch of strangers think about me. But for, a long time, it only took the one time singing
Your
that
values
song.
shifted.
But I think if you take it back to the example you had earlier about being a non-traditional student, going back to school later in life. And the idea was, you've got essentially battling beliefs, right? You've got this belief that you want to be happier. And the way to get happier, the way to be happier is to get the degree in line with what it is you want to do to make your life better, more fulfilling, whatever it is. But battling that belief is a belief that says going back to school makes you lesser of a person, whatever it is. There's some judgment there that you think is being cast upon you and that affects you. But the circular issue is, by having that belief, you can't be happy for the rest of your life because you can't do what it is that you want to
accomplish what you wanted to do.
Accomplish what you want to do. And is that to make you happy, to make your family happy, to provide a better life for you, your children, whatever it is, right? And so that's a circular issue because you keep going around and around. You have to figure out which belief is more important to you. You have to establish that hierarchy. You have to say which one of these is more important to me to figure out which one is less important.
And it will go, if you can talk to somebody about this, it will go into their values. If you can actually tie it to their values, they will go in the direction, you can get them to go in the direction that, in either direction that is basically resonates with their values.
Okay. Yeah.
But I find it amazing. Everything is a belief. So everything, well, not everything, but 95% of everything that goes on in our head is a conclusion of some sort. Right or wrong, good or bad.
Right.
It's just, and we don't realize the power. We've been told your belief system is powerful, and if you don't believe it, you can't have limiting beliefs. You got to get rid of limiting beliefs. Well, okay, explain to me what a limiting belief is. I know it prevents me, but what is it really, and how do I get rid of it? And I think it's a beginning of looking at beliefs in a totally new way in which we can actually manipulate them.
Well, let's go to that. We started the show with the intro talking about how in America it seems very divided right now, different, very strong opinions on both sides of the spectrum, and an inability to really communicate, and sometimes not even want to communicate because the beliefs are so, polar opposite. How do you think, and I know this is an incredibly difficult question to answer, but how do you think we could use the power belief system as a whole in society to maybe find some common ground or maybe be better about how we approach a situation where a person has a belief that is dissimilar to ours, and still have a productive conversation? Because I think that's really what's missing right now. It's so polarized that it's almost like we don't even want to listen. And I'm assuming that listening is a big part. But
well, I think if we realize that there's a couple things happening here. One thing is it's not just our beliefs, it's our instincts. Okay. Anger typically stems from a threat of some sort. And politics deals with our values. Again, our values is the category which deals with the best way we can live life to have the most enjoyable life and so forth. And politics regulates that, right?
And you said that's where the system kind of kicks in terms of emotion, right? Values and up.
Well, yes, because values comes from our alpha beliefs. So values are connected to, so if you believe in God, your values are connected with God. And so if somebody's messing with your values, they're messing with something that's very strong, right? If you don't believe with God and if you don't believe in God, and here are these other people who do believe in God, and they're messing with the way that life should be lived, they're basically threatening how the best way life should be lived for everybody else. Well, then you feel threatened there. And so we basically have a world where all of these other beliefs inside of us are now playing out inside of a value system, and we're feeling threatened. And when I feel threatened, I have two things. I can either fight or flight, right? Or I can freeze. And it's getting to the point now where it's more and more fighting, right? We're getting more and more threatened. And as we were talking about a few minutes ago, there's different ways in which these beliefs have come about. I was talking to you earlier about how did we get to this point? There's a lot of things that brought us to this point. This didn't just happen overnight. And I don't know if we want to go into that, but basically what is happening is that the other side of the table is threatening me on the way that I think the best life should be lived. They're taking away my freedom, or they're taking away my right to do this, or they're taking away my ability to do that, or they're regulating that. And that's threatening to me. And so I can respond with fight or flight. And this is what's basically happening underneath the surface of all of this, is that we're all threatened by the other side. And it's just getting ginned up by the media because, of course, and they're getting the more sensational a story can be, the more money they're going to make. And so they're going to ratchet it up. And so then I feel even more threatened. And then the other side feels more threatened. And then there's factions that they can't take it anymore. So they're actually going out and doing something. Taking to the streets, and then that makes the other side feel more threatened. It's basically a pressure. We're adding more and more and more pressure right now.
I wonder if part of that too is that we've got social media now. It wasn't there before. So now you're interjecting all of these different ideas, all of these different beliefs that other people have that you don't agree with and feel threatened by. So I feel like we're constantly bombarded between social media, television, which is actually kind of fallen secondary to a lot of social media type platforms, but it's like it's everywhere.
Well, that's one of the things. Yeah, that's one of the things that have contributed to this, is this ability for everybody to voice their opinion, right or wrong. The craziest person out there can say something, and it gets their side applauding, and then it creates this agitation. Whereas before you couldn't, before the internet and social media, right? You basically let the talking heads talk, and there was just kind of quiet. But now there's so much. It's no longer quiet. And
people feel compelled, I think, sometimes that they have to comment back. What you said, there are people that have said things, and I'm guilty of this occasionally. I'll see something, and it's not even somebody I know that posted something. And I'll just be so offended or frustrated with that idea that I'm like, I must comment back. I'll write back to them. And I think sometimes later I kind of, why did I do that? Like, what was the point of that, other than to get, my 2 cents in? But did it really change anything? It didn't change anything, and it probably just further, added fuel to the fire, to the extent that now, there's even a bigger feud, because more than likely somebody else is going to come back at me at that point. So
basically, you were operating off. It's just like anything. You're operating off emotion at that moment. Yeah. You were triggered.
Yeah,
that's the word, right?
we make fun of the triggered word a lot, but we think it's hilarious. But
you were triggered, in order to get rid of that feeling that you had, you felt you had a conclusion that if I do this, that will help quell that.
Yeah,
I'll be able to balance this by me posting this back. And you breathe, and everything's great.
Yeah. You're right. I think sometimes
hundreds of millions of people doing this, and it isn't great, because then you go back and read what somebody else said to you.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it ratchets up.
I think having the ideas that you put in the book crystallized like that has helped me, when talking to people, understand where they're coming from better. To understand that we all do categorize these things differently, and there might be something that I think is an opinion, but to that person's mind, they think it's a fact. They think it's a truth. And so just sitting there arguing about what I think or what my opinion is, that's not going to break that wall for them and have any sort of effect, because they don't care what my opinion is. It's the fact to them. So you have to kind of look, if you really want to have a conversation with somebody and not just argue, but to actually try to get them to understand where you're coming from and see your side, you have to figure out those different planes of belief that you're on and try to correct that imbalance. So it's given me more patience.
Somewhat understanding that this is programming inside your mind.
Yes.
Right. Gives you a little bit of distance to say, wait, this is programming inside my mind. And so you don't necessarily feel as threatened when somebody says something. And the best way to do this is not to try to convince them what you believe, but to really listen to what they believe.
Exactly.
Because there's probably shared values that you have as well that you just don't understand that they're communicating in that sense.
I think there's a word we don't use enough, and it's why. Why do you feel that way?
Yeah.
I'm curious. Like, I'm truly, sincerely, not just saying it to figure out how to beat them on the argument.
Now you sound like my 8-year-old.
No, but I mean, really.
Why?
When I was younger, I have a memory when I was younger with my brother, and he used to just tell me the most ridiculous things. He was clearly making them up, just trying to mess with me about stuff. But my response was always back to him, "How do you know that?" And I remember it used to drive him crazy. He'd be like, "You're so annoying, always questioning everybody. How do you know that?" But now, as I'm older, I'm like, I like doing that. Why do you believe that? You just said it.
Yeah.
Well, who told that to you? How do you know that? I think that's important stuff to know when determining your
The problem
beliefs.
is that we don't always know why we believe what we believe. And so that may be even threatening to somebody. You say, well, why do you believe that? Well, then you just put them on the spot. If they can't answer that, for the most part, in a real typical situation, a person probably doesn't know exactly why they believe that. They've heard it, or they're extrapolating it.
They just know they've formed that belief.
They've formed that belief. Right. And when you say, why do you believe that? Depending on how you say that, that might even threaten them more.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult. So it's the best way, if we could, the best part of being a human being is if we could actually become truly interested in why people believe what they believe, and are these beliefs effective for them or ineffective for them as far as how every belief, let me state this, every belief is effective for that person. There's a reason you have that belief, even if it's a pernicious, limiting belief. You have that belief for a reason. It helps you in some way, or at least it did at one point. Right? The belief that, I'm a terrible singer helped you not suffer humiliation in junior high school, right? It kept you out of that range of being threatened. And so a lot of these beliefs just stick with us. We haven't shed these beliefs as we get older. But every belief that somebody is voicing to you, if they're sincere, it helps them in some way. And if you really are interested in understanding what is their programming, like, they're a human. They obviously want what I want. They want to lead a good life. They want to be successful and happy and have people like them and experience this world. But it seems completely opposite of what I'm saying. So how is their programming different than mine? That their programming is giving them those things that I think my programming is trying to give me. It's just a curiosity in people. And if you can divorce the sense of that if your belief system is not a part of your organic being. It is not it's not like your personality or your height or your skin color or your eye color. You weren't born with your belief system. A lot of people don't have that conclusion. Now, do I know that's a truth? I don't know that's a truth. I think it's a fact. You develop your belief system as you go through life. So it's just programming. And the program is either effective or ineffective as far as if it's delivering what you want to out of life. And if you can get away from, well, mine is the truth, is the end all, it is the core nucleus of the universe, and so you have to be wrong. If you can get away from that and say, you know what, this is just stuff that I have self-programmed myself like any software over the course of my life, well, then you can somewhat not take yourself as seriously because you're not coming from a place of like divine truth.
Right.
You're coming from a human being's programming.
Well, and I think when I said the thing about the why and being sincere about the why, is that to me takes the edge off. By reading this book, when someone has a very different belief than mine, and they basically butt heads.
Yeah.
Understanding how they went through the process of forming that belief helps me take the edge off of that emotional reaction, because I'm not as uneducated as I was before reading the book about the fact that there are all these different influences that could have led, life experiences for sure, that could have led for them to truly, honestly believe that. And I didn't go through those things, whatever those are. And because of that, maybe I should not just immediately become emotional or feel threatened because they had a different situation than I had.
Yeah.
So it's easier for me to, I think Kelsey said earlier, like patience. I'm a little more patient after reading this book when I encounter a person that has a very different belief system than mine.
Well, let's bring up the granddaddy in the book that I brought, abortion.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a big one, right?
Ooh. I mean, that I don't think I've ever met anybody who's just like, I don't know.
Yeah. Everybody has about it.
Everybody has an opinion. Everybody has an opinion on it, right? Opinion, so to speak. Yeah. But it's not an opinion. Abortion is a value. Right? It's how you believe that the world should best be run. Now, in the book, I say those who are pro-life, they truly believe. Now, if you're pro-choice, listen to this. The people who are pro-life truly believe it is murdering a baby.
Oh, yeah.
And is there anything more heinous in society than the idea of murdering a baby?
Is there a felony that's greater?
No. And so if you are pro pro-choice and you come across somebody who's pro-life, you have to understand they truly believe it's murdering a baby. Now, if you are pro-life and you come across somebody who's pro-choice, you have to understand this person does not believe they are murdering a baby. They believe it is a clump of cells that could turn into a baby, but as of right now, it's not a baby. And so they're not murdering a baby. They would be mortified to murder a baby. And if you understand that what they truly believe, it doesn't mean that, again, right or wrong, but you have to understand that they're not out there to murder a baby, and they're not out there to stop you or to make you raise this clump of cells and compromise your life. We have to understand the other side's values. They're not the same as ours. At least their beliefs are not the same as ours. They probably are the same value. Children are important. You don't murder children. Both sides could say that.
That's true.
Yeah.
There's a quote that I like by Trey Gowdy. And it always stuck out with me, where he's saying that if you want to understand why Barack Obama was elected for 2 terms, you have to ask somebody who voted for him. If you wanted to understand how Donald Trump got elected, you have to ask somebody who voted for him. Yeah. You're never going to be able to understand the other side's values if you only surround yourself with people that think exactly like you do and have the same belief system, and you take what the opposition is saying about their opponent as truth.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to necessarily concede and agree to what the other side's saying, but take an honest look at why they are what you're just saying, where they're coming from and what their belief is. Because nobody looks at themselves as being the bad guy. Everybody has their own justification, their belief system for it. So you're never going to get anywhere if you're just screaming and yelling at somebody, oh, you want to murder babies, or you want to force women, to have, unwanted babies. Like, you're never going to get anywhere when you're just negatively attacking the other side. You have to try to meet them on their level. So, and I think that's a lost art in society.
You just brought up a really good point that I think I'd mentioned to you before, is this idea of, okay, when you talk about conclusions in your belief system, we see ourselves as a character carrying out our life as a story, right? So I am Steven, and I'm carrying out my life, and I'm in my story, and I am the protagonist of my life. Well, if you look at archetypes, there's typically 4 main characters, right? That you have a hero, a villain, a victim, and a guide. And so typically most people feel that they are a hero in their life, and therefore anything that is against them is the villain. So if I have a cause, right? So let's say my cause is the Second Amendment. I'm not going to choose which side right now, but my cause is the Second Amendment, and I am the hero. So who is the person on the other side of the Second Amendment? They obviously are the villain, right? And I need to fight them because I have to protect the victims. Now, the victims could be people. If you're on one side, it could be the people who are killed by handguns. On the other side, it could be I have to protect the sovereignty of the United States. I have to protect this right,
Right.
So you are being the hero, and you are defending a victim against a villain. And so we're not doing it consciously, but we are often categorizing the other person in these kind of archetypes, which automatically set up this tension and doesn't really allow for us to say, hey, well, why do you believe this? Because it doesn't serve my life. I want to be the hero. And so the best way I can serve my life is to take you down, or is to at least fight you. Because in my mind, then I think I'm living my values to the utmost. I am being true to my values, and I will squash anybody, and I will do anything it takes to make this. And we don't realize, like, wait a second. Okay, you're inflating this sense of this character you have because you need that and it feels good, but you're causing so much more damage by not stopping and realizing that they're just playing the hero in their mind too.
Right. Yeah.
So
everybody wants to be the hero, even Matt.
It's kind of funny as you look through this book, and we're talking about how it applies to essentially our peers.
Yeah.
And I've looked at this a little bit differently recently, and how I deal with, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, I have an 8-year-old son, and how I deal with my 8-year-old, because his belief system is still forming, by the way, but as an alpha for him, sugar is a valued nutrient, right? Sugar's at the top of his alpha belief system. It's like there's nothing more important than sugar in his life. And you can't just go at him and say, you can't touch this stuff. You can't have this stuff. This is horrible for you. they just they ball up at that point, right? You can't talk to them, you can't make any sense with them, and so you really have to think about how he believes in what it is. And I just use sugar as one example. There's so many different things in his life that he just views differently from his perspective, and that when I get in an argument with him about something, I have to stop and just back up for a second and say, why does he think this? What is it that's telling him that? Why are we having this argument? What is the belief system that he's employing here that I have to help him figure out or help rearrange in a way that I'm his father, so I'm going to rearrange it in a way that I think is appropriate.
Yeah.
Is that an authority download?
Well, but you also see you're threatening his belief system, right?
Correct.
Cookies.
But nom 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 nom. But I got to figure it out, right? So I have to figure, so that's exactly what we're talking about. We're just talking about it with our peers, adult to adult. But it's crazy how after you read the book and you look at all these different things and the way you have to view other people and their belief systems, that's how I deal with my son now. Is I look at that, I back up for a second, I say, why does he believe this? And I have to start breaking that down and figuring out a way to break those barriers and talk it through and figure out how to rearrange those beliefs into a way that actually align with what I think they should be as he's my son.
Steven, I did the same thing with defense counsel. I know that sounds like a little bit, too professional, maybe taking it to a different level, but I thought about, I truly think that the defense counsel at times strongly believes that many plaintiffs are out there just trying to get money.
Sure.
They're ripping off the insurance companies. They think that. Do I believe that? No, I don't. I'm sure there are some, but I think they've formed such a strong belief through whatever influences they've had, the experiences, the cases, that it's very difficult at times to convince them of non-objective injuries. If it's a broken arm, that's an easy one. It's a broken arm. Everybody can see it. Mm-hmm. But what about those things that aren't as on the surface? They're immediately going towards the belief that, they're just saying that they hurt, but they really don't. Mm-hmm. And that's a tough one, to kind of negotiate back and forth and talk, and sometimes even take it offensive, that they're in essence saying that my clients are liars, but I don't believe they are.
Well, their client is the victim. Everybody's client is the victim in this game of law, right?
Right.
You have to be the guide, but in your own life, you're the hero. They're the hero, but
it helps me categorize why they think the way they do, the belief that they have a little better, understand it more, and then try to come up with ways that I can not show them that they're wrong, but show them that, I've got more than just what's being said here to give you to maybe alter that belief a little bit, or some facts that as of right now, I've got information documentation that might really change your position on that, because it's easy to get caught up in the fact that they do exactly the opposite of what I do.
How is it working though? Have you found any?
I think it definitely makes the conversation go more smoothly.
Yeah.
And it's probably strategically a big advantage for me to have read the book, because I can use those tools to, again, what are we going to get accomplished if we get on the phone and I say my client hurts and this person says, you're crazy, your clients, they're scamming the system. And we just keep having that dialogue back and forth. We're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
So this is, I think the book has helped me in all facets of life to...
Wait. I want to keep that as a clip. Something. Can you just say that again? There's no better sound bite for me. This book has helped me in all facets of my life.
All facets of my life. But I mean, it's not just personal is what I'm getting at. If you can take those tools that are in the book and then move them over to your professional life and see how you can use them again as another, I hate the term weapon, but another arrow in your quiver when you're trying to come up with the best result possible. Mm-hmm. So
no, I agree. Beliefs permeate through every aspect of your life, and you can always get better in your life. And by using your beliefs, you can better every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
It's just you have to understand what they are and that they are operating behind the scenes, that you don't know really what's going on most of the time. You just do stuff because that's how you've been programmed. And no matter what the problem is, it's probably going to come down to some type of conclusion. It's probably going to fall within your upper spectrum of values to alphas is really what's holding you back or creating this tension between you and another person.
Well, really, really interesting, fascinating concept and wonderful book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I know
Encourage
my
everybody
colleagues
to pick
here
up a
did.
copy.
Yeah, Power Beliefs.
Oh wait, I brought you 3 copies.
Yes,
I think you're going to give that away.
We are going to give it away. I put it out there on Facebook. The first 3 people that like the YouTube video, which again, I'll recirculate that when we're done, because a lot of times we do this in the middle of the day and people are working, probably shouldn't be watching podcast on YouTube. But the first 3 people that do will get a free copy of the book, including free SOL podcast hat as well. If you want to know what those look like, they're right here.
Very stylish.
It's very stylish. And on top of that, I know that you had discussed maybe a little bit about your practice. You were looking to help some people out.
Yeah, I do have something to. If you're interested in this, if you're interested in beliefs and also self-improvement and changing your life, I do have a free program on my website that I developed, and it's called the Habit Wheel. Now, beliefs are nothing unless you actually put them to some type of action, right? If you're going to improve your life. So I've developed this program that uses beliefs to actually help you modify your behaviors, your habits, to either, it's more for kickstarting a habit as opposed to removing a habit. So
it's positive habit, like developing a positive habit.
Developing a habit as opposed to like, I want to stop smoking. This will also explain to you why you keep smoking, but it's free. So if you go to my website, which is www.beliefforce.com, and you look for Mastering the Habit Wheel, it's a free, I believe there's maybe 4 or 5 videos in this. It'll take about an hour and 20 minutes to go through all of it. And it will help you see habits in a completely different light and help you actually engineer new habits to get you where you want to go.
That's really cool. I want to check that out too.
Yeah.
That is awesome. So what was the website again?
Now, I keep saying www, not because I'm from 1990s, but because I believe there's 2 versions of my website out there because people are saying, I don't find that. So if you go to beliefforce.com.
Beliefforce.com.
Yes.
All
Put a
right.
link in the YouTube comments.
Yeah, we can do that.
That would
we'll
be
do
helpful.
that. Sure.
Yes.
Sorry, I choked during your.
That's all right.
It's all right,
sorry about
Kelsey. We'll let it go this time, but only because you're not in the intro yet. If you were, be big problems. We're going to try to
There's nothing
fix
to
that.
take away from me right now. So
That's
you
right.
can't really punish me for anything.
That's right. Well, again, Steven, thanks so much for coming in today. Really appreciate it. Encourage everybody to get out, get a copy of this book. It's definitely something, again, soundbite to apply to all facets of your life. I
appreciate that.
I do believe it.
I do too.
I have a
And I think it's
powerful belief there.
It might sound like we're talking about a lot of really deep
thoughts.
concepts right
Yeah.
now, but I like the way that you write the book. That's very easy to understand and follow along as you're reading it. This all makes perfect sense.
Okay.
It's not. I think anybody
Yeah,
would
it's
get
not-
a lot out of this.
It's
You don't
not
have to be a
hokey
psychologist.
science. It does,
Right.
You don't read it and think, oh, geez, this guy's, he's out there somewhere. I know it was definitely something that was just kept me reading and, really made me think about what's going on up here, which is not a lot, especially after the concussion. But still, I thought a lot about it. In all seriousness, though, it did. It helped me clarify some things in my head and gave me some tools. And the more tools we have in life, the better off we're going to be.
I agree.
So have a read. Matt, you got anything else for me today?
Just want to remind everybody out there listening, whether live or after the fact, to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Look up SOL Legal Podcast to find us on YouTube.
That's
and
right.
Subscribe to our channel.
Got to have the legal part. If you just do SOL, I don't know what those other ones are, but they're not as good.
It's poetry.
SOL Legal Podcast will lead you straight to ours, and you hit the subscribe button. You'll get reminders whenever we're coming on live
That's right.
or have new episodes or put commercials out there.
Yep. Special K, you got anything for me before we sign off here?
Just thanks to Steven for coming in. This
Wait
was
a
a fun
second.
one.
Wait a second. I'm not her favorite podcast so far.
Oh my gosh.
She just break?
You
Did
just-
she break the streak?
You just
Oh,
cut
my-
me off. I was about to just
I
say. I was
think
looking
there was a
forward.
pause. There was just thanks for being here, Steven. And I was just like,
boy.
wow.
Whoa.
I'm not sure what
Guess
I
that
think
I
last-
was
about
about to say, I was really looking forward. I was really looking forward to this
That
one,
is a
and you
problem.
did not disappoint. So thank you.
Okay.
I know somebody listens to the show anyway.
Yeah,
right?
I'm
I was-
gonna say that was a good callback from the Morgan
Really
episode.
good.
I was going to clip that and put that one next to his soundbite. So
She'll have to circle back on that.
She'll circle back. She'll circle back. Well, to the listeners, thanks so much for tuning in today. Again, this episode will be edited and put up on all of the podcasting platforms, including iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Verbal, and any other place that you listen to podcast. Until next time, this is Shake and Bake signing off. A special thanks again to Mr. Carr. And until next time, we'll see you.
Thank you for listening to SOL. Join us next time on Facebook Live, YouTube Live.